There's little, if any, messaging that says we're worthy. Just existing means that we're good people. People see my body as valuable only when I'm good at sports. Teachers see me as valuable only when I make good grades. Cops see me as a threat just because I'm a Black person. My relationships, there may be exoticizing of my body. There are few, if any, spaces where Black men have the opportunity to be loved, validated, affirmed, and held.
Welcome to 365 Brothers, the podcast. I'm your host, Robin Shine. I am delighted to bring to you brothers from across the United States and from various professions talking about their life experiences, their wisdom, and a conversation that also touches on racial profiling in the United States, how pervasive it is, what the impact is. And remember, you can follow us on Instagram at 365 Brothers. Also, follow us on Facebook at 365 Brothers, the podcast. If this is your first time listening to a 365 Brothers episode, make sure you subscribe because you do not want to miss one brother's wisdom, one brother's experience, and their perspective on life in the United States.
Today, we have the privilege of speaking to a gentleman who works with men and masculinity. And what he does is he works to train and help build communities. He trains schools and organizations and basically holds the space so that people can develop healthy ideals of both self and masculinity. And I'm really excited because, as you know, here's this woman who decided she was going to interview 365 Black men. And I'm just really delighted to have a conversation with someone who is like steeped in that work of what is masculinity. And I'm not saying we're going to answer that, but I am telling you, we're about to have a great conversation with Mr. Leroy Mitchell. Welcome, Leroy.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on, Robin. I mean, I'm like, you need to be my hype person. Like wherever I go, I need to have you with me.
Look,
I'm like, oh,
give it up for Leroy.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, are we really about to do all this? Okay, let's do it. All
right.
Robin says so. Let's do it. Yeah.
I really like. See, when I get excited, my voice gets real high, and it's bad for my listeners because then they volume. They be like, "What's she doing?"
Hey, I gotta stay ready. They know what's up. They know what this is.
They know what's up.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do the usual questions. You know, I got my little rhythm with the podcast, but I got to start with, before we started recording, I told you that in the 80s, I took a course in college called Men and Masculinity. And it was just like this new thing. And it's kind of funny for me to reflect on that right now, because I don't think a lot about the courses I took in college, but it has me wonder if the exposure to that is what had me go, you know what? I want to hear from Black men, and I want the world to hear from Black men. Like it's not a conscious connection, but I'll never know if would I still be doing this if I hadn't been exposed to those ideas, right? And which brings me to why I love what you're up to, because there's just not a lot of conversation. And before I even let you speak, because I'm just running my mouth right now, I got to tell you, one of the things, and I've shared this on other podcasts that I've guested on, like one of the things that just surprised me so much was how many times I would hear men, like there would be some question where they would share the moment that their child was born. And the way they would talk about it, like I actually kind of have a chill just saying it, because the way that they would talk about it was the same way that in our culture, we're accustomed to having women talk about it. But in our culture, there's no appreciation for the impact of childbirth on men. And so, because that's one of the things that just, it's in the top 3 of things that I've learned from talking with men, it has me realize how our view of what men is as limited as our understanding of who women are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I am just discovering the extent of it. So now I'm done. You can talk, okay?
Well, I don't think there's nothing else that needs to be said. You know what I mean? You gotta set it off. But yeah, just echoing that. First, yeah, I'll quote bell hooks, which I'll probably do a lot throughout here because
I
bell
love bell
hooks,
hooks.
Black feminists, like really
I
changed
love
my
her.
life, right? So, as far as education goes, bell hooks says the classroom is the space where the most radical possibilities exist. You know what I mean? So, thinking about education as this liminal space, like this very vulnerable and crucial space. It's like, how do we use that space? We can use it to explore, we can use it to question, we can use it to grow, or that can be a space that, can be used to further perpetuate certain isms, be used to perpetuate certain ideas of masculinity, of capitalism, of I need to grind to prove my worth, and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, just echoing what you said, we move through education, all these things, can influence us on a conscious level and, on a subconscious level. Second, with childbirth, I mean, I don't have a child myself. So, you know what I mean? I'm not a father. So, dads or parents out there like, man, this boy don't know what he talking about. He ain't had no kid.
Look,
valid.
I don't have kids either,
valid,
so I don't know
right,
either. Okay.
Right. It's just saying, like with my own conversations with men and masculine folks, there's a time when childbirth gives us that permission to be vulnerable, to feel the most raw, joyful, hopeful moments, before all those isms come into play. When a child is born, like there's that hope, there's that wholeness, and saying like in this moment, I can experience all of my emotions. I can experience happiness. I can express, I can cry.
I can be my
because of
whole
how
self.
Exactly. So yeah, I think those are moments, when men are able to express
Connect
and
to that.
really, connect to their whole self. Yeah, it's not surprising that that's a moment.
I love that
right there.
you said that. As an educator, I would love to brag and say, I'm very aware of the kinds of isms that are hidden in our curriculum, and I do everything I can to correct those. I wish I could say that. That is not true. I just realized in the last 3 or 4 years that I was overemphasizing job over joy, over self-expression. You either gonna do a business or you gonna get a career. And if you don't know what to do, you gonna go to college.
Right.
So we're gonna dive in. What is a favorite song or movie, either now or all time?
And I just realized this, when I'm listening to music, I'm not so much listening as I am feeling. And so the artist that helps me feel the most, is Frank Ocean. I think his first song came out in like 2009 or so. And I think I was 14 or 15, something like that. Okay. And so, at the time, I, being socialized as a Black boy, being star of the football team, all this and all that, like there was little, if any, opportunity for me to just like express myself. It's been very, very much so normed for me to not express my emotions, to be perfect, to exhibit this persona of what it meant to be a successful young Black man. There was never really space for me to like process and like feel things. However, when I played Frank Ocean, there's just a certain vulnerability that Frank Ocean has to his music there's a certain imperfection that I feel like gives me permission to feel my own feelings and just sit with, the imperfections. Like a lot of other R&B artists, a lot of other music, they talk about love, they talk about other things. It's usually like pursuing another person or doing something, pursuing a career or something, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Frank Ocean is like, I'm just here living and experiencing the world, experiencing heartbreak, experiencing fun, experiencing joy, experiencing melancholy. Like I'm literally just living and I'm doing it imperfectly. And I don't really have answers per se. And for me, it's like, especially growing up, it was like people think I have the answers, but I don't. And so just having an artist that can provide that message and provide that space for me to put his music on and be imperfect and be in my emotions and just be in the moment and listen is something that, his music for me is as timeless as, emotions are. Like I never stop feeling my emotions. So feeling my feelings and having feelings. So Frank Ocean will never get old for me either.
In your work and in your experience, do you see yourself as being similarly sensitive and emotional as other men, or more so or less so? And I know you can't prove or know for sure, but I mean, in your assessment, your experience.
Yeah, I think as people, I think we all have capacity to feel our emotions on any given day. Like how willing are we, or how safe, I won't say willing, how safe do we feel? How safe do we feel to like feel all those? So
I like that.
I would say I am in spaces and I've cultivated spaces and relationships where I feel safe enough to experience, and others may not feel as safe to do so.
So, because you mentioned the age being a young teen when you first heard Frank Ocean, even at that young age, you already felt the weight of the expectations of who you needed to be as a young Black man, as a young athlete. And so I hear Frank Ocean being one of the first safe spaces for,
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Calling bell hooks, goal number 2. And bell hook says the first form of violence that men often feel or experience isn't the violence that they enact upon others, but the violence that was enacted upon them that told them that in order to be accepted, they had to sever the ties that they have to their emotions. So that emotional severing is violence. And, I know for me personally, I remember being 3 years old watching TV. Women were in the space and they said this man was cute on TV. And I'm 3 years old. I don't know, no concept of heteronormativity, like what it means to be straight or gay or whatever. And so I'm like, oh yeah, that man is cute. And the next thing I remember is like feeling a hot, not being able to breathe and feeling like my chest be hot because someone hit me in my chest and told me, you're a boy. Men don't say no man is cute. Don't say that shit. You know what I mean? And that was 3 years old. So at 3 years old, I learned real quick that in order for me to be safe, in order for me to be accepted, in order for me to be a man, that saying another man was cute was not, that's one no-go. Like you can't say that, and I mean, there's other instances in which, I would express my emotions and it would be shut down. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I remember at 3, at 12, at 14, at 15, I broke my foot, my left foot playing football. And for 4 weeks, for 4 games, I played with a broken foot because I didn't want to appear soft and I didn't want to let my teammates down. And it wasn't until I got strep throat that actually I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, "Hey, why are you limping?" I was like, "Oh, I twisted my ankle, but it's fine." The doctor was like, "How long has it been hurting?" I was like, "6 weeks. You may need an x-ray." So, and I would say, for the masculine folks here listening, I'm pretty sure that almost every single one of them can remember the first time where they learned that if they wanted to be accepted or they wanted to not be harmed, that there's certain ways of being a man, there's certain ways of carrying yourself that are accepted and they're not. So,
Man,
yeah.
I can imagine how many times I've heard aunts and uncles or, friends. We don't do,
Don't,
you know,
boy, don't, yeah,
that's the one right there. Boy, don't you,
boy,
girl, you
don't,
know better.
no,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you?
Girls don't, boys don't.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right, right. Well, I mean, the thing is, I think a lot of most, if not all men would say, like, my intention isn't to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
My intention is to protect people. Like, I'm the
Mm-hmm.
protector. Like, that's my role as a man.
Mm-hmm.
And from the time when they were young, in order to protect themselves, there
Mm-hmm.
was something that they had to do, or they had to man up, or they had to, be tough. And so for me, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I need to tell my son, I need to tell my boy, whoever it is, I need to tell them, because if I don't tell them, when they go out into the world, they're going to experience it and it's going to be way harder. So rather me harm you because I love
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
than somebody else out there in the world. And so I feel like it's like a generational trauma, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
So my little cousin here, although my intention wasn't to hurt him, if I told
Mm-hmm.
him he can't cry in this moment, I
Mm-hmm.
enacted harm. Like, I harmed
Mm-hmm.
him. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that I'm violent or I'm an abuser or
Yeah.
anything.
Right.
And at the same time, how do I say, like, hey, little cousin, that was harmful and I'm sorry. I love
Mm-hmm.
you, and it's okay to cry. It's okay to be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to do X, Y, Z, and
Mm-hmm.
not make it about, oh, I'm a bad person, but rather
Yeah.
I love this other person. I love my son. I love whoever,
Yeah.
and I want to do right by them.
But I love that you put that out there, that it is possible for you to be a great person and still do a bad thing and own it
Yeah.
without having to make yourself a monster. So thank
Yeah.
you just for that.
Especially as a black man, there's little, if any, messaging that says like we're worthy. Just
Mhm.
existing means that we're good people. I know for me personally, growing up, people see my body as valuable only when I'm good at sports. Teachers see me as valuable only when I make good grades.
Yeah.
Cops see, cops see me as a threat just because I'm a black person. Yeah, I'm a black man. Everywhere I go in my relationships, there may be certain exoticizing of my body,
Mm-hmm.
saying like, oh, you're a
Mm-hmm.
black man, so you must
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
So like
Mm-hmm.
there are few, if any, spaces where black men have the opportunity to be loved, validated, affirmed, and held. And so, like, if there's nowhere else where I can feel loved, I'm not going to say I was wrong here, because I'm not going to, like, if I ain't got myself, who do I got? Like,
Right.
even if myself, I'm saying I'm wrong, nowhere else am
Mm-hmm.
I saying I'm good. Like, hell
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not. Who am I? I'm just like completely worthless then. So
Right.
yeah, so it's just part of my growth, part of my healing is saying that, like, which has helped me be accountable, which has helped me in other spaces in my relationships, is saying like, yes, me, Leroy, I am a beautiful person. I am worthy of love. I love me and I don't have to do anything to earn that love or earn my worth. Like I have imminence, which means I am inherently worthy. And so if I come from a standpoint of me having imminence, then it's okay for me to admit when I harm somebody because that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person because I have imminence.
Yeah.
So it creates space for me to take accountability. It creates space for me to hear other people's opinions because I don't have to earn my worth.
What is a favorite moment from your childhood, Leroy?
As a kid, I always thought that I loved playing sports, and I do, but that came with a lot of anxiety and pressure because I played sports thinking I was going to the league, to the NFL, or like, I'm going to provide for my family. Thinking back and how competitive it was, actually, sports really wasn't that fun for me. Not a lot of things that I did as a kid really weren't fun. I would say the one thing, though, that was fun and that I like to this day is almost every day during the summer. I'll grab my bike, I'd grab my fishing rod, fishing pole, and some bread, and I would ride my bike down to the lake and just fish.
Okay, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Where you from?
I'm hiding it right now, but I'm from Texas originally.
Okay.
So
you're not just hiding it. You put it in a closet and locked it under the floor.
Oh man, you get me around some other Texas folk, it'll come out
right out
for sure.
Okay,
Man,
I understand.
But yeah, I would love to go fishing as a kid.
Wow. What did you love about it?
I think in retrospect, now it's because everything felt so fast around me. There were so many expectations around me all the time as a kid that when I got to the water, there was just a calmness and it was still and it was quiet and I could just be and I could just decompress. And really didn't matter if I caught any fish, but just being by the water, having the time to just be with myself and just like think and dream and just be present with no care in the world was something that was rare for me. And getting sunlight, being out in the sun. Yeah, that was my jam. I loved it to this day. I mean, I live in LA now, so it's super hard to go fishing. But whenever I can go back to Texas, like definitely fishing. That's my jam.
I think that's why I asked you earlier about your relative sensitivity. I find myself in your presence on this Zoom very slowed down. I mean that in a good way. Like you're very calming. It's both in how you speak, the tone you speak, but it's your whole energy. And so when you were talking about the music and all that, I was like, well, it occurs for me as you being present, right? And does that then allow him a greater, I was saying sensitivity, but I can see now what I really meant was a greater sense of awareness. And anyway, and so it's so perfect that your favorite moments from your childhood, they jive with what I'm experiencing with you. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
This next question is about accomplishment. I asked this question in two parts. The first part is, what is an accomplishment that means the most to you personally? And then an accomplishment that gets the or wow most often when you share it. So let's start with the first. Which accomplishment is the one that means the most to you personally?
Sure. I don't say necessarily call it an accomplishment, but maybe a commitment or realization. I came to the realization I cared more about my own healing than I did about what it meant to be a man. Because for me, what comes with being a man, quote unquote, in my experience has been like very harmful. for me, it's like, being this high achieving Black excellence, whatever type man, that wasn't serving me. And it kept me from experiencing my wholeness for so long.
When did you know that you were choosing your own health and well-being over predetermined ideas of being male?
Yeah. So I guess like segue into the next question. So I guess an accomplishment that people are like, oh, wow, I was accepted into Harvard. And so like, it's like, oh, Harvard is like the best school in higher education. And I remember I worked so damn hard to get there, to get in, to be accepted into Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally got the notice, like, I wasn't even happy. I was just like, yeah, of course. Like, I worked my ass off. I'm quote unquote Black excellence. Of course, I got into Harvard. That's what I'm supposed to do. And it was like, dang, man, like, why was I supposed to do that? Because I got to provide for my family, because I got to do this. It was just, it just was not a moment. I was like, I feel happier now when I have a breakthrough in therapy and I learned something about myself that was unknown to me for years or for, forever. I feel happier about that than I do like being accepted into Harvard or being valedictorian or being whatever, all-state, playing football in college. I did all those things at the expense of myself. And I did all those things because for me, I thought I would be worthy enough of love if I accomplished XYZ, instead of already knowing that I'm worthy of love regardless, just existing.
That seems to be a spring theme so far. The interview I had with Dr. Archer, he was all about like mastery, self-mastery and things like that. And it just made me remember when I was in law school and I was not happy, and it was the same thing. It was like, I did all the things. But how come I don't feel like it feels like nothing? It feels like, when do I actually get to live my life? When do I actually get to enjoy life? Like, when does that happen? Did I miss something? And so as you're saying what you're saying, I'm hearing a similar theme. It's like, and that's why I'm saying it feels like that's the spring theme of male or female, that going after the American dream as determined by our group, whether it's our race or our class or whatever that is, that as we go for it, it replaces any sense of what is of value to us and meaningful and fun.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like, I'm not saying that I don't still strive, because the reality is, like, I got bills to pay. The reality of living in America is like, you still got to get stuff done. The thing is, I'm not getting lost in the sauce. I'm grounded and I'm rooted in my values and what's important to me. Yeah. And, the thing is, it's like, I don't know, I'll be quick. It's like, the thing I say is like, I don't care about what it means to be a man. I mean, like, third quote by Bell Hooks, third or fourth quote. Like, but Bell Hooks says, us Black folks, we don't accept what white people say that Black people are. However, we don't go far enough, because although we don't accept what white people say Black people are, we accept what white people said it means to be a man. And so when I hear be a man, we call it a colonial masculinity. A colonial masculinity. And that means that, like, I have to have power over people. I have to maximize my financial wealth or power and control.
Oh, you're hurting me over here.
I have to, right. Like, I have to have as many sexual partners. Like, I have to be in power. I have to be in control at all times. In order for do that, I can do whatever I want. I can be emotionally violent. I can be physically violent. I can be intellectually violent. I can gaslight, whatever it takes for me to have power and control to gain my own sense of self-worth. That's what a colonial masculinity is. And I say that is not mine to hold. I'm not down with that idea of what it means to be a man. You know what I mean? So what does it mean to be a man besides that? That's the thing. I don't know, because like, okay, well, I can be emotionally supportive or emotionally aware. Well, women can do that too. Anybody can do that. I can be a protector. Anybody can be a protector. And it's like, being a protector doesn't mean being able to fight, all the time physically. Sometimes protection is being emotionally present, listening, taking accountability, being present in a relationship, like not traumatizing your kids and telling them that they should be this or that. Like, that's what protection. How do I protect my family's hearts? You know what I'm saying? So
you just blew my mind with this colonial masculinity. This is the first time I'm hearing that term. I don't think they had that term when I took my little men and masculinity course. You've just blown me away, because you throw that adjective colonial masculinity and then you describe the power, the go, and maybe it's because I've taught world history, I'm a student of history. So it's not just a passing term for me when you say colonialism. It's real for me. The colonization of Africa, not just the slave trade, but the actual colonization. It is real for me as studied, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you say that, and then you imply that we have taken that plunderous behavior and collapsed it with being a man. And now I'm like, because everything you were saying when you were like, get as many women as you can, get as much, like you're free to gaslight, you can do whatever you want. It's like all of a sudden my head was just like, oh, dang. And I have to be honest with you. I'll be honest with you, like I fully identify female and all that, but I also know, like my friends will tell you, like people say, you kind of like a guy, you act like a guy in certain behaviors. In some ways you're saying that, I'm like, I'm actually feeling like a dagger going, dang, where in my life am I living from dominating?
Yeah. And that's the thing. Although we say colonial masculinity, has nothing to do with being a man or being female or being male or whatever gender. It is everywhere, because I've seen Black gay men be just as harmful, be working in colonial masculinity just as much. I've seen lesbian folks, I've seen non-binary folks, I've seen trans folks, I've seen everyone, women, cis women. It's not.
I'm so glad you said that.
Nobody is absolved. Nobody is absolved.
Anyway, okay, we got to go on. Favorite words. What's your favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book? Well, okay, let me just say this. Of all Bell Hooks quotes, no, I'm just kidding.
You ain't lying. You ain't lying.
What's your favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book?
Yes. So this is from Bell Hooks.
Just kidding.
Yeah, and it's from one of her books called The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love. It says, integrity means being whole, unbroken, undivided. It describes a person who has unified the parts of his or her or their personality so that there is no longer a split in the soul. That's the quote. So for me to live with integrity means for me to recognize my wholeness. That means my emotions. That means literally everything about me. And so for me, I'm like, what are those things that have kept me from my wholeness? Part of that is colonial masculinity. Part of that is this idea that in order for me to have self-worth, I need to have this idea of Black excellence. It's all these different things that have kept me from loving myself and recognizing my wholeness. That's my quote. I have it posted somewhere on my wall.
I love that quote and what you're pointing to. I love Bell Hooks. And although I can't remember any quotes to say, Her book Communion stands out.
Mm.
Okay, see that sound right there that y'all just heard. See, that means y'all need to read that book too, right?
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh, I read that trilogy about love that she did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, All About Love. What were the other two?
All About Love,
Communion.
Communion.
That's another
I don't
one.
remember the titles. I got them. I could go get them. They right on my bookshelf. Right, my bookshelf is right behind me. Let's talk about a moment, conversation, or event that either changed the trajectory of your life or had a significant impact on you.
I'd always thought I was going to go to the NFL. Like, that was my dream. But in college, like 2 torn hamstrings, a concussion that lasted 6 months.
Wow.
Finally, like, separated my shoulder, or AC joint. And I remember being on the operating room table, like right before they put me in anesthesia, thinking like, what do I do now? Who am I? Like, my life's over. Because like that's all I had, because I wasn't aware of my wholeness, and who I was outside of just like sports and academics. I was depressed. I had suicidal ideations, and because like I don't have football, like can't take care of my family, what good am I? So mentor of mine, Andrea Morris, gave me Bell Hooks' book, and I needed it because I think I was open to even opening the book, because I needed something. And then Andrea gave me that Bell Hooks book, and I was like, oh, forget it. I don't have anything else to lose. So let me just open up this book. And then I did. And I was like, wow, there's another way to live, So been trying to do that ever since, live with integrity ever since.
Wow. I'm appreciating that her sharing a book at the right moment becomes an access to a new purpose, a new intention, at least.
For real. For real.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
What's a moment that either signifies or in some way highlights your experience as a Black man in the United States?
This was about 3 years ago, like 2019 or something. There's like this running track by a high school where I used to live. I remember, I was working out and I was running 200-meter sprints. I was just minding my own business. I noticed somebody was like on the grass running beside me. I was like, damn, I know my shadow ain't like way over there. What's going on? Right. And so I noticed that the running beside me was this little Black boy. And so I guess he was there with what seemed like his mom and his grandma. They were like walking, and he was with them, and he would wait for me. He would wait for me to get to the run and walk and get to my starting place. And he would just watch me. And as soon as I took off, he would take off. And he was like, he was like racing me.
Yeah. Like how oldish? 5-ish, 6-ish, 10,
probably
15?
Like, probably like 8. Probably between like 8 and 10. It's a little kid, could tell.
Okay.
And so, I was like, oh, that's cute. But, when I thought about it, I was like, I wasn't even trying, but just this body that I'm in, there's another little Black masculine kid that's looking at me and is going to follow my lead. And so thinking about the work I'm doing now, it's like when I step to that line and I begin my race, how do I want to run? How do I run? How do I want to run my race? Do I want to run it in a way that was like steeped in colonial masculinity? Or do I want to run a race that is going to honor my integrity and my wholeness? Because that little boy, the little Black boy, is watching me. So whatever pace I ran, whatever race I ran, he's going to run that too. Wow. And so for me, it's like me doing my own work and living with integrity. hopefully it's going to help him run his race, or a little Black girl, or little non-binary child, whoever it is. They're watching me. So if I'm taking care of myself, living with integrity, hopefully they'll pick up some ways on how they can live with integrity and be in their, while they're on their own race, whatever that looks like.
Powerful. You're reminding me and you're reminding listeners that the children around us, whether they are our families, whether they are in the grocery store, just watching how we check out. And again, it's not about being concerned about other people's opinions and views, but it is, like you said, how am I going to run my race?
Right.
Because somebody else may model themselves or at least get an idea. Like, right. And then on the other hand, what you're saying is the opportunity of it, because as you are mastering, yourself, and you are open and curious and discovering, then that also is modeled.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. Tell me either one or two, something about your interactions with law enforcement.
So I remember I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I was watching TV. I was watching the local news on TV, and literally 2 days before, I have an uncle, and I was at the uncle's house. He had just got me a Nintendo 64, and so I was at his house. He gave me a couple games, some new games. I was like, "Oh shoot, thanks, Theo." 2 days fast forward, I was watching TV, and then all of a sudden they say drug bust. Drug lord gets 25 years to life in prison, and it was my uncle on his face, his mugshot on the screen. And I remember I was thinking to myself, I was like, "Wait, but my uncle, my Theo, he's a good guy." And I remember asking my mom, like, why is Theo there? He's a good guy, like us, right?" And she didn't know what to say. And so I think from 4 or 5 years old, I had already this concept of if your law enforcement was for good guys and bad guys and this and that. And I was kind of messed up, because I was like, well, that's my uncle. We're related. That's my family. So does that mean that I'm a bad guy or a bad person too? And so I was really confused about that. I think since, so I was valedictorian in high school. So, and I was part of this law program. And so I wanted, if I didn't make the NFL, I wanted to be a lawyer, quote unquote. So, so I would always go to the courthouse and stuff. And I got mentored by judges and all this and all that, and police officers, but I think, and I'm like, they do that because they know I have potential, quote unquote potential, because if I wasn't valedictorian, would they care about me? I'm like, I'm sure one of these police officers knows my uncle, who is, they don't know that we're related, but I'm sure they know him. So, I think that always messed me up, which, I think for me, police, law enforcement, they're part of this colonial masculinity, capitalist, white supremacist society. It's just another key in a cog in the machine. And I don't want to have conversations about, good cop, bad cop. I ain't talking about that. You can be a good person and be part of a system that's terrible. So, I mean, I've had experiences on both sides, and law enforcement does not create space of safety and accountability. It creates a society of punishment, shame, and fear and terror. So, because it works in colonial masculinity. So, yeah, that's my interactions with law enforcement.
Yeah, colonial masculinity is still messing with me. I mean, because I hear you, but all of a sudden I'm just seeing all the ways I buy in, all the ways I find colonial masculinity kind of comforting in some ways.
Yeah. Well, because it's about, yeah, for sure. It's like, because like I have colonial masculinity and capitalism creates a scarcity, the scarcity mentality. So it's like, yeah, especially if I'm of an oppressed group, I'm going to double down on the areas in which I myself have privilege. So I'm a Black man. I'm oppressed by racism, white supremacy, and to double down on like, the oppression I experience, I have privilege over women and femme folks and folks that are not cisgender. So yeah, like I'm gonna exploit, I'm gonna really lean into that privilege that I have over them because there's not enough privilege, or there's a scarcity mentality, like this this society of I gotta get mines or else I'm gonna get got. So better you than me.
All right.
So
okay.
yeah, like I know, like, so I'm fair skinned because I'm mixed. So I have hella privilege over darker skinned Black men. Like I know white people, educational systems. I go to the store, I talk a certain way. I know I have privilege. And I mean, I finessed it to get like a lot of scholarships, you know what I mean? And move around, you know what I'm saying? But it's just like, that's what it is. And I'm aware of that. And I need to continually be aware of how I am, because it's not a matter of if we are transphobic, misogynistic, sexist, racist, whatever. It's not a matter of if, but where it's showing up. Because we grew up and we live in a world that is built upon divisiveness and colonial masculinity. So we're going to pick up some traits.
Man, you got me all ready to go do some research, do some reading. It's like I need to read a paper on colonial masculinity now. And then I know I'm just gonna be like, oh man, because I guess really what's there is I am aware of my privilege, the areas where I have privilege, and I have acquired some areas of privilege, and I want to use them. And it's very colonial to want to use them, to make the most of them. And I'm not making it wrong. It's not like I'm gonna stop going on vacation to an island. It's not. I'm not. But I do appreciate realizing like where it is that I'm okay with. It's just know that term is just really racing around. I love it and hate it, but I love it. Well, perfect segue into our next question. If the United States was a woman, Leroy, what would you say to her?
I think this was a tough question for me because I'm like, I associate the United States with like colonialism, all this stuff. So I'm like, oh snap. It's hard for me to make an association of like the United States and like a woman. So I'm like, for women, it's not their fault. So like, I guess I would just speak to how I'm feeling. And I would say like, I'm hurting. Being in this world, being in this world is hard. It's tiring. It's exhausting. I want to love. I want to be loved. I want to be accepted. I want to take accountability. I want to help others. I want to be in community. I want to be gentle. I want to release. I want to be able to let go. That's what I hope for myself. And that's what I hope for you. That we can be in a world, that we can, be in relation with each other in a way that makes those things possible. What I would say.
I like that. An invitation to a new relationship. I almost
Yeah,
hear, you didn't say these words, but I hear an invitation for healing.
yeah, there it is. Boom. See, if I would, if you know, if you, I wish you would have just repeated everything I said. Like this podcast would be like 75% shorter if you just said the things. But yeah,
Let me tell you what all that is. It's because for me, it's things are too much. Concepts are like when things are big. And so I have developed the habit of needing to distill and to understand. And so it takes all the words you said, Leroy. It takes every word you said and not one less for me to get what I got so that I could say it that way.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. What is a moment that epitomizes love in a non-familial setting?
I think love is, I think an example of love, I think acting in love is being vulnerable and real and authentic, having the courage to do that, and holding space um, for another person to be
Yeah.
authentic and vulnerable, and to hold all their vulnerability with just as much care and tenderness of the things that I like and the things that I do not like. Because at the end of the day, like that other person has imminence and just as much worthiness as I do.
Well, what's a moment that you experienced that or that
Yeah.
epitomizes that kind of relation?
Yeah. I would say with my partner. I feel like, dang, okay, I guess I'm going in. I believe that I'm a good guy, quote unquote. And I believe that I do things for other people when, for me personally,
Mm-hmm.
it's really about my ego. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's some entitlement that I feel that because I'm a nice guy or because I do this or I do that, that I'm entitled to certain things and for people to celebrate me or applaud me or things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So, I remember I would buy all this stuff for her and she'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm appreciative, but that's not what I asked. Like, that's not the kind of love that I wanted. That's not the way I feel loved or appreciated." And then I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, well, you don't appreciate me, like, like you don't realize how good of a man you got, like this, and this, and
Mm-hmm.
like it was." And that's because again, I wasn't in alignment with my own worth and
Mm-hmm.
integrity. I felt like I had to prove myself to receive love instead of being vulnerable and just being like and open and listen and say like, hey, love, how do you want to feel celebrated? How do you want to be appreciated? If someone were to say something, I'd swell all up and be like, hey, yo, what's up, bro? Like, put on
Yeah.
this big old macho thing
Yeah.
where it was like, instead of centering my partner and saying like, hey, what do you need to feel safe in this moment? You
Wow.
know? So,
Wow.
and it, cause I had my own mental health challenges, and I think my partner saw that way before I did. I appreciate her labor for
Yeah.
holding that space while I
Yeah.
figured it out. Yeah. So I even broke up with her. I was like, nah, I was like, you don't appreciate me. I'm gonna go
Mm-hmm.
find women who do. So like we broke up,
Mm-hmm.
for like a year.
Mm-hmm.
I broke up with her for a
Mm-hmm.
year, trying to
Mm-hmm.
fill my own dissatisfaction and low
Yeah.
self-esteem and self-worth with other things. She lived her life and, she was like, okay, I came back. We met serendipitously at a restaurant, surprisingly, just ran
Mm-hmm.
into each other. And I was like, hey, what's up? So you want to try again? And she was like, I done let you go, fam. Like, I
Dang.
know myself. I love myself way too much to deal with that stuff you got going on. And I was like, you right. So, um, you know, she was like, I still love you, I want the best for you. But like at this time, like, no, fam, we can't do this again. And so, we during the pandemic, like, we had both grown and we just connected, like, on a level that honors each person's integrity and imminence. And, eventually, we're in a relationship now. We connected 2 years later, and I think our relationship is way different now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of it.
Hey,
Yeah.
if you could meet any other Black man, living or deceased, who would it be? And what would you do or what would you talk
I guess I would probably meet my brother.
about?
I had a younger brother that died premature when I was like 3.5,
Okay.
So, I mean, I never really knew him,
Mm-hmm.
but, I think like it would be cool to connect with my younger brother who I never knew. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm always curious, like, what would he be like? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I don't know. In my belief system, you'll get to in heaven. I don't know that that's true, but that's my
for
view.
sure. And I mean, like, I would say, like every time I feel my feelings, every time I rejoice, I feel like, those are the feelings of my ancestors.
Last question, Leroy, is now that you and I have had this conversation, what did you get for yourself personally out of participating in this conversation?
Yeah. I think, the space to like reflect, um, that question. I think I'm like really, like, I'm getting emotional, about the last question that you asked in particular, about like, who would I meet? And like, that's the first time I've really even like mentioned like my brother, like to
Wow.
anybody. I don't think anyone really knows that. My partner knows it, but yeah. And I think like just doing the work to like, you know, heal and just be present with myself really just, you know, has opened space for me. And this being a space really just opens up space and allows me to explore, parts of myself that I may not have been aware of, and feelings and thoughts that I was not tapped into. And so, just thank you for holding space, for making space, for me to explore and learn and grow myself. Yeah.
Absolutely. At the very end, I always share my impression of the brother that I've interviewed. And for me, Leroy, you are just furry love. And by that, I mean, you're the space that, you know, how there's something for, and it's not just about that you want to touch it kinesthetically, but that it gives you this certain feeling, or maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but you get this certain feeling of being grounded and of love. Because if I got something furry and I can go, oh, then I'm grounded, I'm present. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm willing to be still for a moment and get to know myself. I'm a curl up, is what I'm saying. And to me, like that is you. It's just you are that, and I acknowledge you for making the choice to share your curiosity and your willingness to self heal and be that model for it in the world. And thank you for all the work that you do around masculinity, around men. Talking to you, it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm so hopeful for what's possible for not just men, but for all of us as human beings to be our authentic, fully self-expressed selves. So thank you for being a stand for that.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay. I receive and I accept.
Hey, oh, that's the best right there. That's all there is to say. I'm glad.
Thank you for listening to 365 Brothers. I certainly hope you enjoyed the episode. I encourage you to subscribe. Please leave a review. I want to know what you think. Also, if you know someone who would be a fantastic guest for 365 Brothers, please direct them to our website, 365brothers.com. You'll also find all the episodes there, 365brothers.com. And your support is welcome. And remember, to listen is to love.